Hello and welcome to the final video in our Road to the World Champs series. If you haven't figured it out already, I am Henry. I recently went over to the World Championships of Warhammer in Atlanta 2 weeks ago. It was an absolutely fantastic event. I had an awesome time, but I wanted to do kind of a full wrap up to summarize everything that I did and went through to get there and how it all went over there. So let's get into that. Sorry if I keep glancing over to my left. I've got kind of my full script there because this is going to be a long one and I definitely want to do the event justice. So how do you sum up an event like this? I had a fantastic time. And I had an awesome time preparing for it as well. So part of that was because I tried to get everyone else in the community involved and invested. Not that I'm a complete narcissist, but it was something cool that we could all kind of get behind and talk about and discuss and kind of work together to be able to kind of set me up as well as possible to do the best kind of represent the local area, but also then represent Australia over there as well. So it was a massive challenge getting there, but the challenge to get there was nothing like the challenges that I saw over there, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. So rolling all the way back to the start of 2023, I won my golden ticket at CanCon's Call to Glory event. I came fourth out of, I think it was 203 people in the end, going undefeated over the 5 rounds there. I have done a blog article about that, and I'm going to try and put it in a card on YouTube. I'll try and put it up there, but we'll see how well that goes. Otherwise, you can just find it on the website. But that was an awesome experience. Playing 5 rounds at such a huge event and doing so well was awesome. So I'm definitely proud of that achievement. And the fact that it was announced afterwards that it came with the golden ticket as well was huge as well. So once it was announced, I was pretty confident that I was going to go. Excuse me. And I was keen to just kind of get underway and get into it. So unfortunately, I did pick up a bit of a cough on the flights home. So I apologize in advance for that. So that was awesome to get the golden ticket so far out as well. So I could kind of plan and figure out kind of how I wanted to go there. Originally, when I planned about it, I was like, I need to do as well as possible. I need to do like the absolute peak performance to do that. And then slowly as time went on and I got more details, I kind of realized as much as I would like to do really well over there, that was definitely an unrealistic expectation. So there was going to be about 100 of the absolute best players in the world. So to just kind of assume that I would do really well was definitely underestimating a lot of their abilities. So one thing that was said in a couple of the calls that Games Workshop organised and at kind of the opening ceremony for the event was that a lot of that mathematically, at least one person there was going to lose every single game they played. And that was going to be a fairly new experience for a lot of the people that were going. So the fact that they kind of called that out over several times to kind of just reiterate the fact that you're playing against the best people in the world. So there's not going to be like any just easy kind of cruisy games. They're all going to be against people who regularly go 5-0, go undefeated at tournaments, who are the sharks of their local area, who are kind of the big names. So so that was something that I did slowly taper down my expectations. So over the course of preparing for it, I played over 30 games with the list that I ended up taking. So originally I planned my list to be kind of similar, because I assumed being a GW event, it would be similar to the other GW events that I've been to. There is a local championship store kind of near me. It's about 2 hours away that I play at occasionally, and their tournaments there are 50% battle, 25% painting, and 25% support. Apologies. So I incorrectly assumed that that would be how the World Championships were done. Because GW, they have confidently said that they are a miniature company, they are not a games company. So their first and foremost preference is to create kick-ass models, and they do that. But the games are definitely a second in all their marketing releases, and so I assumed that they would have a fairly heavy emphasis on painting and sports, but we'll get to that kind of as we get closer to that area. So I played an absolute ton of games. I documented them all. I listed out kind of what I thought I did well in the game, what I thought I did poorly, what tweaks I need to kind of make to the list, and so on. So out of those games, I won, I think it was about 26 of them. I only lost a couple. And a lot of those losses were very poor matchups, or they were very early on in the kind of the planning out. So I was fairly happy. Apologies again. I was fairly confident that I could do well over there. At the start, I was like, yep, I'm going to try and make it to like the final rounds undefeated. And the closer and closer we got to it, the more I was, hey, let's taper my expectations so I don't get disappointed. And when we went over there, my top kind of absolute goal that I would be 100% happy with was if I had a positive kind of win-loss. So like more wins or equal wins to losses and draws. So that was kind of where I tapered off my ambitions to. So after we fast forward, we've organised flights, we've organised hotels, and I'm getting on the plane to travel over to Atlanta. I was traveling with my wife. She was an excellent supporter throughout the whole trip. And I would definitely recommend anyone who travels for these big events to go over a bit early and do some of the touristy things. We had a fantastic time over there in Atlanta. And traveling with your partner is a great experience as well. So, and they can get to kind of experience kind of the peak of what your hobby is as well. So I'm very lucky that my wife is very supportive of me and my hobbies. So I definitely love it when she comes along, because she might not be as invested as I am, but she at least understands how passionate I am about it. So for us to get over there, it was only about 30 hours of traveling. One flight over there almost made me check my miniatures box, and they're all magnetized into it, so that was a huge panic until I could kind of sneak it past them and fit it into one of the airport overhead bins. Then we got to Atlanta. It was awesome that the local club, the Georgia Wargamers, they had actually arranged some of the locals to come and collect people from the airport, which was huge. So we were picked up by Seth. He was a lovely guy. We chatted the whole way to the hotel. But I can't state enough just how friendly and inviting that makes arriving there. Like, we'd just been traveling for 30 hours. We were absolutely exhausted. Having to then try and get an Uber or get a taxi and get to the hotel and all that hassle was just taken care of us. So 100% you guys are awesome over there. So we got there about 2 days before the event started. And so after traveling for so long, we wanted to try and adjust to the time zone as quickly as possible. So we just crashed when we got there, and then the next day we went to the Georgia Aquarium. It's been heavily advertised. It's one of their kind of big tourist attractions. But the other reason that we went there first was because, from what we'd been told, it was a really nice, low-key, just relaxing. We could just go there and just zone out. So, and it was. I would highly recommend anyone who is in Atlanta to go and check out the aquarium. It is amazing. We did the behind-the-scenes tour to see kind of behind the scenes for a whole bunch of the exhibits, which was awesome as well. Excuse me again. I'm very sorry about this cough. I just can't seem to shake it. But it was fantastic. We ended up zoning out in front of one of the tanks for about half an hour, just sitting there, just watching all of the animals just go around. So we ended up meeting up with some of the other Australians for lunch that day. So we caught up with Tom, and then I got to meet Mitch and Joel in person for the first time. Tom I've known for a while. We played previous games against each other. But that was awesome to just kind of catch up with those guys and just talk trash, talk through the lists, the players, the pools, kind of what we're excited for, what we were thinking about the event. It was a fantastic kind of lunch. We ended up going back to the aquarium and just zoned out for the rest of the afternoon. which was fantastic, and those guys headed off and did their own thing. But later that night, we ended up kind of all itching for a game to kind of get the rust off and like get there and do the thing that we were there to do. So we ended up going over to, they were all staying at the Hyatt at that point. So we went over to their hotel. We found kind of a couple of spare tables in one of the lower convention levels, pushed them together, grabbed out some disposable cups as terrain, taped out a quick board, and we all kind of got a game in. So I got to play Tom, which was fantastic because we hadn't actually played before in any game. But the other thing is, not only was it a fantastic game, it definitely got the rust off for both of us. While we were there playing, a whole bunch of the event staff were coming down to check out the venue. They saw us and we got to catch up with kind of all of like the very top organisers, head judges, a lot of the people that did a lot of the really important critical work behind the scenes that you don't actually see on the day. So it was fantastic to catch up with them and kind of talk about how we were excited for the event. And they were all just pumped to see that we'd come over here and we were playing games and we weren't going to let something as simple as not having a table stop us playing. But that was an awesome experience to kind of meet some of them, and they all seemed really pumped to have us over as well. So the next day we ended up, or me and my wife did a bit of shopping. So my wife has, I wouldn't call it an addiction, but she does love going around and just kind of seeing the deals at all the various shops. So we spent the day going around to all the local US stores that we don't have back here in Australia, which was, I was prepared for a lot worse, but she is a very kind person and only kept me busy for the morning. And then that afternoon we kind of switched the hotels and then started kind of checking out the venue and harassing all the Games Workshop staff that were very much just trying to set everything up, and they weren't kind of there to entertain anyone. They were there to get a job done, and we were just kind of in the way, which was amazing for us, but probably very annoying for them. So we had the opening ceremony that night, which was really cool. They kind of listed off everything about what was going to happen in the event. So it was really cool to kind of hear them and just hear how excited and pumped they were that they were like they'd actually been able to plan this and bring it to life. So then we just easily crashed because the Thursday was the first round, first two matches. So my first round opponent was one of the US guys, Chris, who was playing Gits. He was an absolutely fantastic opponent. Played an incredible game, as all of my opponents were fantastic. So unfortunately, I have an exceedingly high bar from this event for how opponents should act, and Chris was definitely part of that. It was awesome to play against. The downside of the game from my perspective was I started to have a bit of a theme for the overall trip, and that was just some horrible luck with my dice. So I played quite a solid first turn. Chris went first, played a very solid first turn. I played a solid first turn. He then had a very solid second turn, and my second turn just kind of disappeared. So my dice very much kind of just didn't turn on for the game. At one point, I had my Kernoth Hunters were attacking some Fellwater Trogs. I had 18 attacks. I needed 4s to hit. I got 3 hits. So absolutely horrendous luck. That isn't to say that Chris didn't play an absolutely exceptional game. The biggest thing is once you get ahead in these games is you need to be able to kind of maintain that lead, and he did an exceptional job at that. So with my bad luck, it gave him just that slight edge, and then he exploited that and then just made sure that I couldn't get back into the game at all. But a really solid game from him. But unfortunately a solid loss for me, which wasn't how I wanted to start the tournament. But if I was very happy with how I played, and with the only thing going wrong in that game being dice, I'm very happy with that. So you've always got to assume you're going to get some bad luck at some point. So if it's just dice is the reason that you lose a game, then that's fine. I'm perfectly happy with that. I think even without my dice, I probably would have lost that first game, but it would have been a lot closer. Chris's list was just very finely tuned and had a lot of answers to the questions that I was asking. And with how he played his first couple of turns, I very much doubt he would have been making a mistake in the later turns. So I would have needed to do some pretty big and risky plays and had them work out for me if I wanted to take that. So, but yeah, a loss in the first round was kind of not what I wanted. But with how they had the pool structure, it didn't kind of eliminate me from the competition either. So I was still pretty pumped going into round 2. And then in round 2, I played against another US guy, Tommy, with his Ogre Moor tribes. He had a really cool list with a whole bunch of Guttons, Iron Jaws, Tyrant, a Firebelly, which I hadn't seen for ages. I used to play Ogres back in Fantasy. But like I really liked his list. And he definitely knew how to pilot it well. Once again, he had a really solid first turn. I then had a very solid of my first turn. I won the priority roll going into turn 2, and I decided to give it away. And this, giving away the priority roll is always a bit of a dicey call, because it very much, if you kind of don't time that properly, then it can lose you the game. I gave it away on the basis that Tommy would have to be making a lot of very long charges for him to kind of be able to engage me. Otherwise, he'd just be looking at kind of another passive turn. And if he didn't move up any closer, I'd be able to kind of keep him off the objective. So that was my thoughts of why I'm giving away. I probably wouldn't lose the game on that turn. And I'd be able to do an even better counterpunch. Then Tommy made 5 9+ charges for his army. So if anyone knows dice math, I think it's roughly a 0.08% chance of him pulling off all 9 of them. Some were 10s, some were 11s. But he just got exceedingly lucky, and with Ogres doing the mortal wounds on the charge as well, absolutely crippled me that turn. So that was an absolutely devastating turn. After his kind of charge phase ended, he kind of took a step back and was like, holy crap, I did not think I'd do that much damage. And like he looked at me, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, like that's how the dice are going. And I was like, dude, don't apologize. You've got hot dice, write it out, like run it for as long as you can. So we played on, but he played really well. Once again, he's at the World Champions of Warhammer. He's going to be a very solid player, and he used those big charges to get ahead, and then just did not let me get back in the game. Played really solid. I tried some slightly risky plays to get back in the game, but he managed to kind of shut me down at every stage. At some points, he just had excellent positioning with his Gorge and Moor pack. Other points, he very correctly prioritized which units to attack and which orders and how to position stuff, and it was a really, really solid game. So. But another loss is disappointing again. But once again, it was dice. So he had amazingly hot dice, and then he played a really solid game. And usually, I'm looking at a lot of the scores that went through around. A lot of the games were quite close, which makes sense if you've got 2 very good players piloting the lists. And it was the games that kind of had the big swingy dice, or people that went for the big risky plays that had kind of the bigger point differentials at the end. So that was day 1. I was a bit disappointed to have lost twice. Wasn't kind of great for my morale at that point. But I played 2 absolutely amazing games against 2 absolutely amazing opponents. So I was still kind of okay about it. So both of the games hadn't been a walkover either. Like I still managed to score semi-decently until I kind of got fully tabled. So I was still kind of happy that I was still holding my own. But yeah, two losses first up is not a great way to start. So going into day 2, I played another guy from the US, Ricky. He was also playing Gloomspite kits. His army was actually nominated for the showcase as well, and it was absolutely impeccably painted, like absolutely beautiful army to play against. And his army's beauty did match his own personality. He was an absolutely awesome opponent. It was a really enjoyable game. Like throughout the game, we were constantly reminding each other of kind of like, oh yeah, just remember if you move here, I can do this and I can do this, and like kind of playing the game together but against each other, which is a fantastic way to do it because it means that there's no gotchas, there's no kind of forgotten about things and like, oh, you didn't realize I could do this. No, he knew I could do it. He decided to do this and I could do that, and yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic game. I managed to win this one. I had a turn of some really good dice when I needed it, and my Colonel Sides managed to hold his kind of army out of the zones on a very crucial turn, and that let me get ahead, and then I managed to kind of hold on for the win. So it was a very close game, even with the win, but he played an absolutely amazing game, and it definitely would only have taken kind of one bigger play or one of his more risky plays to go off for me to then lose that entirely and drop that game. So, but yeah, fantastic person to play against. But I was really happy to get a win at that point. Kind of reminding myself that I can hang out with these guys. I can compete. I'm not just going to get stomped into the ground every game. So my second game that day was against my first non-US opponent. I got to play Everest from France. I'm 100%. I'm very sorry if I have mispronounced your name. But he was playing Lumineth. Now, I will kind of preface how I talk about this game and the next game. I have played at the World Team Championships for War Machine a couple of times, and both times I played against a French player, and neither game in that system was that enjoyable. The game system is very clean, but just my opponents were very much, they were there to win, and that was kind of it. So I didn't really enjoy either of those games. So I was a little bit hesitant kind of coming into this game whether or not it was going to be a fun game. But Everest definitely proved that it was a player issue and not a stereotype, because we had an absolutely fantastic game. This game was Nexus Collapse, so where you remove the objectives, and it was probably the most technical, intense game that I have ever played. Both of us played impeccably, trying to figure everything out. I made a mistake with using an ability on an objective that didn't exist. We got a judge over, and we came to an agreement with kind of, cool, I committed to that play. What would have happened if I couldn't have done what I did? And the judge was really good. He was like, cool, this is probably the best result. And then we were both like, I said, like, I'm happy with that if you are. And he was like, yep, let's do it. And we could get in with kind of very little interruption in the game. But it was absolutely insane, this game. Like, we both agonized over every decision. And even the little things kind of added up in the end. So, and the game was a draw. At the very end, like after we rolled out the last priority, figured out last battle tactics, we tallied it up and we got a draw. And I think that was an amazing kind of result for that game, because it definitely felt like it should have been a draw. It was neither of us felt in control of that game. Both of us were kind of just hanging on by a thread. But yeah, an absolutely incredible game. So, and then my last game that day was against another Frenchman, Martin, and this was a mirror matchup. So he had Sylvaneth. So I love and hate mirror matchups, especially with Sylvaneth, because they are such a good technical skill check, which is amazing to see, because it's a very much kind of a to and fro. The downside and the reason that I hate mirror matchups is because as soon as one player gets ahead, they often stay ahead, because whatever tricks you've got, they've got as well, depending on what your exact list is. But for Sylvaneth, it's a very techie, teleporty thing. And so usually once one of us gets slightly ahead, they can stay ahead. And that was 100% the case in this game. Martin had a really solid... Didn't have a great first turn. I didn't have a great first turn. He had then a very solid second turn and kind of just managed to just sneak ahead. And then because he played his turn so well, it actually stopped me scoring max points for that turn. And then because of that, he managed to just kind of stay ahead throughout the rest of the game, and then had some really hot dice in the last turn, which was pretty much said and done, and I was just kind of hoping for a Hail Mary there. But yeah, closed it out, played exceptionally well, and yeah, took the win because of it. So, but yeah, looking back at kind of the day 2 of the event, I'm still really happy with how I played. To get a win, a draw, and a loss in that kind of shark tank of a pool, I think I'm really proud about that. To go kind of in the pool play, going a win, a draw, and 3 losses. I'm still really happy with that result. It's kind of proven that I can kind of compete at that level, and a lot of my losses were either quite close or were very swingy kind of early, but still managed to kind of stay in it. So at this point in the tournament, apart from my first 2 games where I got tabled, I didn't actually drop a battle tactic. So I'm really happy about that. It means that I was still able to kind of make the good choices throughout the games, even when I was on a bit of the back foot or it was getting quite tight. So that was the pool play. So I didn't qualify for the championship bracket, so I was in the world's bracket with most of the other people. So that meant I played another 3 games, but just kind of for all my opponents in the pools bracket, they're all excellent. 100% I would play any of them again in a heartbeat. I had a great time with all the US guys. Me and Everest, it was an absolutely incredible game. Like at the end of it, we both kind of just collapsed into our chairs, just absolutely exhausted. Just from what a nice kind of clean and technical game it was. Martin took a bit to warm up to me, but once he kind of understood kind of the jokes that I was kind of dropping throughout it, I've got a particular brand of humour. Mainly I was insulting Dreicher at every opportunity because she just wasn't performing that game. But after he'd kind of figured out that I wasn't insulting him, I was insulting my own models, we had a really, really fun game and managed to make it very enjoyable. So, but yeah, absolute blast playing that. If that was kind of the end of the whole thing, I'd still be really happy, but I got to play 3 more games. But yeah, got to play 3 more games, so it was an absolutely fantastic experience. So now I was in the world's bracket. So I was keen just to try and just get another couple of solid games in. And my first opponent in the world's bracket was Matthew, who had brought his Nighthaunt army all the way from Wales. That was just cool because I got to play kind of someone else from a different part of the world. Unfortunately for me, I have a very bad game into Nighthaunt. And because he was at the World Championships of Warhammer, Matthew was a very good player. And so kind of the bad matchup, I was kind of skeptical from the start, and then, it kind of didn't go well. My biggest thing into Nighthaunt is I am very much relying on good dice, which my dice weren't that great. But that doesn't diminish Matt's game. He played an absolutely exceptional game. There was a few points where I thought that he might have left an opportunity for me to kind of get back into it, but he shut them down very quickly, and he played a very, very solid game and a very kind of controlled game. At no point did I have a good opportunity to get back in it. He very much just kind of shut me down, scalped out all of my important pieces, and didn't let me get to any of his really important pieces. So round 2 of the world's bracket, I was playing Ricky again. So I went up and checked with the judges and just was like, hey, just checking. I played this guy before. And they're just like, oh, sorry, but you've got to play him again, just because it's a new tournament, so the system doesn't kind of account for that. And when they said it, I was like, look, I'm fine with playing him again. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a mistake in the system. And we had an absolutely incredible game the second time. We'd already played each other once, so we'd gotten a measure of each other. So we knew the other guy wasn't going to be trying to game the system or kind of tripping us up over millimeters, that kind of thing. And we knew that we could kind of not work fully together, but kind of rely on the other person to help us out a bit to make sure we hadn't forgotten anything when we were planning out our turns. And so we had a great game the second time. We were actually very shocked when a judge came over, and we were kind of about halfway through turn 4, and the judge came over and was just like, hey guys, what's happening? And we're like, oh, we're having just a really good time. What's wrong? He's like, oh, you've been playing for 4.5 hours. And we're like, oh, okay. He's like, it's fine because we're calling it, there's nothing else after it on this day. But yeah, just so you guys are aware. And we fully had not realized just how long we had been playing because it was just another fantastic game. We definitely spent a lot of the game we definitely played a bit slower because we could kind of we realized we were both willing to kind of help each other and like go, oh, I'm going to try for this battle tactic, I need to do this, this, and this. Looking around, yeah, okay, that should all work. And then it's like, oh, don't forget I've got this on these guys, or I've got this over here, or kind of just making sure that each of us had the full information to just make it a really nice, fun game. And that game actually ended up in a draw. Ricky got ahead on the last turn, and I went for an absolutely massive long shot play on the final, like on the bottom of turn 5. Got really spiky dice and pulled it off and managed to pull it back to a draw. Which I'm very happy about, but if Ricky got the win that day, that game, 100% deserved it. He played an absolutely incredible game, and it was just awesome fun. It was probably either that or the Everest game. Either one of my draws were probably my picks for the most enjoyable games I played over the entire event. So that isn't to diminish any of the others. I had a great time in every game. But just those ones were just kind of that next level up of making sure everything is clean and nice and helping each other. So, but I played one more game. This time I played Alexi from Canada, which was awesome just because I got to play someone from another country. Once again, he had a Sylvaneth army, so another mirror matchup. And unfortunately for me, he had some solid dice early. And then I had a poor turn of dice getting some of my buffs out, and then he took advantage of that and got a very solid win out of that. He played an absolutely incredible game. I'm very keen to run a very similar list to what he did, just with the way that he played it. Looked very enjoyable, looked very interesting. So I'm very keen to give it a go. Apologies again for the cough. But yeah, no, it was an absolutely fantastic game, and it was a fantastic way to round out the event as well. It was a good, clean, enjoyable. Once again, we both knew what the other guy could do. So we could kind of like, cool, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. He's like, cool, okay. And then we could skip kind of having to explain certain parts of it because we knew what the other guy was thinking the whole time. So being the Sylvaneth matchup as well, a lot of times in that matchup, you're trying to summon trees to block your opponent from being able to put down trees where they want to, which is really interesting and entertaining when you're trying to slot the bases in around where your opponents put trees. So, but yeah, absolutely fantastic game. And a fantastic way to finish off the event. So I was really lucky with getting 7 opponents over 8 games that were all excellent. Like I would 100% play any of them again. And that was kind of one of the highlights of the event for me. I've played in big international tournaments before. Not everyone is a nice, friendly guy that's just there for a fun, good, solid game and is interested to see how it goes. Some people are there to kind of game the system and take advantage of every little thing. None of my opponents were like that, which was fantastic. So I got to play 7 awesome guys. I made 7 friends. Hopefully they enjoyed the games as much as I did. And I got to play 8 absolutely awesome games of absolutely top level Warhammer. So, but I ended the event with 1 win, 2 draws, and 5 losses. It is worse than what I was hoping for. I was hoping to get either an equal or a positive result. But I very much underestimated kind of what the international community is capable of. And part of that was kind of my list as well. So the biggest issue with my list was my grand strategy. I didn't have a good grand strategy, and the one that I ended up taking was very easy for a lot of my opponents to negate. It's quite easy, and a lot of the time it was mutually exclusive. So they were already built their list to deny what I was trying to do. But over the course of the event, I only dropped a single battle tactic, and that was in my game against Matt and his Nighthorn, and I actually dropped that one on purpose to get up on attrition. I kind of went the safe play because I didn't think I would wipe out a unit, and then got some really spiky dice and did. So I was like, cool, that's worth it. I'm happy to drop that tactic to get up on that attrition. But yeah, so like overall, I was really happy with how I played. I wasn't as happy with my list, but what I'll get to in a second is kind of my list was written for a different style of tournament. So, and what I mean by that is my only experience with Games Workshop tournaments for Age of Sigmar is the local championship store, where they've got a 50% battle, 25% painting, 25% sports. And that's the breakdown for how you score overall. They'd have best painted, best sports, and best general, but that's the overall. I very much assumed that would be what the World Championships would be like. They would have a best general, best painted, and best sports, and then the overall would be a combination of the three. It might not be 50, 25, 25. It might be, say, 70, 15, 15, or it might be 50, 30, 20. But I assumed that's kind of how they would do it. And so I wrote my list specifically to kind of not game the system, but to take advantage of how that works. So my list is fairly interactive. It's got a lot of... It doesn't have as many really tricksy plays that other lists do. And I've found that it's kind of more enjoyable for my opponents to deal with. Not easy, but enjoyable as in the fact that here is kind of the question. Let's see how well you can answer it. Because the other list that I was debating was a Seraphon list, which was Fangs of Sotek, very techy, not very much fun to play or play against. It's very much, I just cast spells and you remove models. I wasn't 100% confident with Seraphon in the current meta, but it was kind of, it's my more competitive, I want to win list. Unfortunately, I got the overall scoring very wrong. So they had an almost even split between battle and painting. So you got about half your points from your game scores and half your points from painting, with no sportsmanship whatsoever. This very much caught me by surprise because almost every single other big GW event that I'm been aware of has had at least some aspect of sportsmanship. So the downside of this as well is we didn't actually get a players pack until about a month beforehand. Overall, the communication early was very lacking with any of the details. I wasn't able to book flights until quite late because I wasn't even told kind of the exact times and the exact times of the event, whether or not I'd be able to fly home on Sunday or if I'd have to wait till Monday. So I assumed the worst and I booked an extra day. Unfortunately, that adds an extra day of hotel stay. And then you've got an extra day of kind of just costs overseas as well. So I was a little bit disappointed that it was so lacking. Understandable, that's their first big event and some of the things were probably still very much up in the air at that point. But yeah, that was kind of one of my larger issues that I had with the event. I was a bit disappointed to not see any aspect of sportsmanship in the players pack. Only getting the players pack as well a month beforehand for such a large event is quite cutting it quite close in my opinion. Any 2-dayer is kind of, from at least my opinion, your players pack should be set fairly early, ideally before tickets. Understandable that some of their tickets went out almost 9 months before the event, but at least 3 to 4 months. Just because there is that production value. If I had known earlier that painting would have been so important, I might have taken a slightly different list that was better painted. I'm very happy with how my Sylvaneth is painted, but I have tons more Sylvaneth that I haven't painted that I could definitely get up and put that extra bit of effort and quality into. So yeah, only getting this the players pack about a month before is kind of an issue from my perspective. Once again, it is understandable. It's their first big event like this. So I'm not going to kind of hold that against them. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm never going back. 100%. If I score another golden ticket, I will be going back. But yeah, it's one of those learning experiences that I hope that they take on board. I know I mentioned it in the feedback form they sent out. So I know other people had the same issues. So hopefully they do take it on board and they improve it in year to year. One of the other issues that I had was by not including any sportsmanship awards, it unfortunately allows some players to be that little bit more toxic than they usually would be. Now, none of my opponents were, and I hope that I wasn't in any way confrontational or aggressive or gave any of my opponents a bad game. But some of the games that I watched and some of kind of the comments that I heard after games is some people very much took the fact that there was no sportsmanship awards to kind of mean that, hey, the only thing that matters here is winning. And so some of them were fairly toxic. Some of my friends, how their games went, they said it was fine until it wasn't. And it was kind of, it was all good until it got very close, and then my opponent started nitpicking kind of things that previously we just kind of agreed to, yeah, no, that's understandable, it's hard to do that. Again, reassuring all of my opponents, they were all absolute gentlemen. I would absolutely play any of you guys again in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, this is just what I heard. And in my experience, usually people are like that because there is no sportsmanship component. Whether it's a separate sportsmanship award and it's not included in the overall standings, that often helps it. Because even if people aren't kind of gunning for that type of award, they're usually that little bit nicer. That's just my experience. But yeah, I can't kind of comment on anything of that. I know when I run events, I always have a heavy emphasis on sportsmanship because when it comes down to it, it is a game between two people. If the two people aren't having fun, we're kind of missing the forest through the trees. The last kind of little issue that I had was with the tournament software, Best Coast Pairings. Multiple times during the event, the data was different on the website or the different versions of the app, which was different again with the web app they created for the GW page. It was a bit confusing. At one point, the round could only be viewed on iPhone. So we had an entire table of the 5 Australian AOS players and all our supporters sitting there, and only one of us could actually pull up our matchups because only one of us had an iPhone. So it is a bit annoying that they did have technical problems, but once again, it's the first time they've run this type of event. It's an absolute massive event. Being a software developer myself, I know kind of the amount of work and effort that would go into the back end of doing a system like that. And yeah, it's kind of one of those things that it's going to fail because you can't account for everything. But the fact that it failed was a bit disappointing, but it's their first event. They'll get it better, and that's it. Everything will always improve. So, I don't want to end this video on me just whining about the things that I didn't enjoy. I can't state how much fun I had at the event. So I'm going to lift off some of the things that I did absolutely enjoy and that they absolutely nailed and got great. So if this is kind of the similar length or shorter, it is not the case. I definitely, the positives of going to the event massively outweighed any negatives. And I can't stress that enough. Like, if you get a golden ticket and you get the opportunity to go, you should go. Now, if you're watching this video after scoring a golden ticket, go now. Book flights, book hotels. It is worth going to. So the things that I did enjoy. Firstly, my opponents. I know that some people had issues with their opponents throughout and after their games. I did not. Every single one of my opponents was an absolute pleasure to play against. Everyone played clean. Everyone played precise. Everyone played accurately. Everyone knew their rules. Any rules issues that we did have got resolved really quickly and smoothly. Every time we had a rules issue, we just called straight for a judge, got a judge over, and they dealt with it really well as well. So that's another thing that I wanted to call out, is the judging for at least the AOS portion was excellent. Every time we had a judge come over to give us a ruling, they were super friendly, super easy to deal with, and when they made a ruling, they were 100% clear with why and how the ruling was made, and made sure that both players understood, and it wasn't kind of like, this is my ruling, deal with it. It was like, cool, this is how I've come to this ruling, this is why it's going to be ruled this way. Both of you understand, there's nothing else you guys want to say. Cool, you both agree. Excellent, cool, let's get on with it. And yeah, it was everyone that I dealt with was fantastic. So all of my opponents were great. We very much played. There's one example in my game against Everest where the whole turn he had spent going, I'm going to score my battle tactic and 1 point to be 1 less than you. And I was like, cool, let's do it. Let's figure it out. Do it. And we did it all. And at the end of the turn, we're done battle shock. We're totaling up points. We're like, cool, okay, you score your battle tactic. You score, yep, you hold that one. And then we looked across the table and it's like, oh, you still hold that one as well. He's like, oh, I thought I lost it. It's like, no, because I did that and that. And then we had to do that to fix it up. He's like, oh, okay. And then he looked at me and was like, kind of, well, like, I wouldn't have done that. I was like, no, dude, it's fine. You said at the start you wanted to score your battle tactic and 1. So one of his units that was claiming an objective, we just moved, like, shoved them out. They're only just towing in. We just shoved them out. And he was like, cool. I'm glad it was that easy. Like, no. 100%. You said multiple times throughout your turn, this is what you're intending to do. Even when he moved them in, he said, I'm going to move these guys in to hold this objective. That means I'm holding 1 objective. If we'd realized earlier, I would have said, no, that's your second one. You already hold that one. So he wouldn't have put them in. But that was just, I found it's a really good example of just everyone played really clean and kind of was easy with, this is what I am doing. This is how I'm going to achieve that. And then if you saw any issues, you'd bring them up. You'd say, oh no, just remember this, or just remember this. So yeah, opponents, absolutely amazing people. 100% would play any of them again. 100% would have any of them over to Australia. So if any of you guys are listening to this, get in touch. We'll organise for you to come over to one of my big events here. All the judges were absolutely amazing. I gave out a ton of merch to all my opponents, and I had some left over for all the judges as well, and they seemed really pumped that they were getting free stuff for doing something that they really enjoyed. So the other highlight, one of the other big highlights for the event for me was the company. So I spent most of the time there either hanging out with my opponents, a couple of random guys that we just kind of met over there. Some of them were like kind of, they played similar armies, or they'd heard about my videos, or they were playing one of the other Australian guys, or I was hanging out with the other Australian players and their supporters. Everyone was just pumped to be there. So this was like, it's kind of mecca for anyone who plays wargaming, or Warhammer, not wargaming. Like you've got the UK Warhammer world. This is kind of, if you're a competitive player, this is what you hope to get to. And it was absolutely fantastic, and everyone was just so pumped to be there. So, but yeah, definitely calling out the other Australian players and all of their supporters as well. They were all like, we had a great time. Like we went out to dinner, we got lunch together. We ended up going to a gun range on the last day when we were kind of all due to after we'd finished all our games. And it was just an awesome time. Like those are the friendships that you take away from events like this. And those are the people that you still like, you catch up with at the other big events. Like some of the guys are already saying, it's like, hey, reserve a couple of tickets for your next big event and we'll all fly up to come to it. I'm telling them the same thing. Hey, next time this one's on, I'm going to crash at your place. I'm going to come down for it. So, but yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights of the trip for me was hanging out with all the other Australians. And not only did we just all hang out, they all did really well on the tabletop as well. So Joel earned Best in Faction with Big War. Mitch got 3rd Best in Faction with Iron Jaws. Tom not only got 3rd Best in Faction for Maggotkin, but also ended up winning Best Painted for the entire event. So he had the best painted army at the World Championships of Warhammer for Age of Sigmar. I believe his Instagram is at Tom Paints, or something to that effect, but you should go check it out because he's got an absolutely beautiful army. So, but yeah, it was just fantastic. So, going on, like the event was really well run. Like there were some issues, but it was a huge event. It was the first time they were running it at that location. It was the first time they were running that system. It was the first time they had all the different things. They had, like we were playing in the competitive hall. They had, I think it was close to 350 players in there. So just organising an event of that big, let alone having like 6 streaming tables, 4 different game systems, judges and loot and swag and everything for all that. They had a full shop there. They were selling a whole bunch of all the Forge World stuff, all their models, a whole bunch of exclusive stuff. I picked up a couple of t-shirts that are the kick-ass. They even had a whole narrative event there as well, and that was like a lot more atmospheric. The tables were amazing, and everyone there was having a great time. So like I cannot understate just how awesome the event was. It was awesome. It was fantastic. I'm running out of synonyms for awesome and fantastic and incredible and amazing, and because I had a great time. And the biggest thing that kind of got to me throughout kind of the whole event was this was the first one that they were running recently. Like they might have run big ones beforehand, but this is the first time they've run the World Championships of Warhammer in that format at that venue. The first event is always the worst. There is so many teething issues that you can't account for, but the second one is amazing compared to it. So if that is their kind of base level that they're going to build off, I am so pumped for them for the next one, for the year after, for the year after. So I would 100% go back. If I can earn myself another golden ticket, I will be going back. It's probably unlikely because now that they've gotten the word out about how good the event is, those golden tickets are going to be snapped up. And they are going to be an absolutely really hot commodity. So, but it was an awesome event. I'd 100% go back. And the experience was amazing as well. Like I got to meet a whole bunch of people that I never would have met before. I got to hang out with a whole bunch of awesome opponents, got to play some kick-ass games of Warhammer. And it was just awesome. The biggest kind of thing that I'm taking away from it is even though I didn't do as well as I was hoping, I was happy with how I played. Like all the games that I played, I proved that I can, proved especially to myself. Like when I was over there kind of seeing everyone playing, imposter syndrome was hitting hard. But I proved to myself that I can hang with those guys and I can hang with the best of the best. But the question is, to be the very best of the best of the best, that is another challenge entirely. So that might be something that I look to work towards over this next year or the year after, or it might be something I focus on something else. So I'm yet to make that decision. But if you've got any ideas, leave them down in the comments below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this overall series. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, even though it's been absolutely ruined by my constant coughing. But yeah, if you have enjoyed this series and this video, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I do want to be doing more videos in future. I am talking with a couple of the other good players, or some of the other best players in Australia, some of the people that went over with me, to talk to them about how their experience was, and what it is like to play AOS at that high level, and even other games I'm looking to get into as well. So, but yeah, if you've enjoyed it, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, check out our Facebook page, check out our website. But yeah, no, thank you to everyone who has supported me in getting here. I know that there's quite a few of you that I have leaned on very heavily, to hitting you up for rules questions or advice, or throwing, like, even just bashing my head against a brick wall in games going, I know I don't have a game into this, but can you put it on the table? I want to see how bad it is. Or, hey, halfway through a game, I'm like, cool, can we re-rack? We know how this game's going to end, but I want to try something different this next time. So I definitely wouldn't have got there without the community. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to play at the level that I did without the community. So a huge thank you to all of those guys. And hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.